invitation for me to speak at this celebration of World Environment Day. My slides should be appearing. Yes, no? No slides? Can I show them from my end? I'm okay here. Okay, here we go. I just want to give a kind hello to Professor Shinawi, who really is a legend in biosafety and biosecurity, and our interactions also on the Inter-Academy panel in Trieste have also been so fruitful over the decades. I'm honored to be here among so many esteemed colleagues. Some are known to me, some are not, but all of us are gathering here to discuss this important topic. I'd like to start with a quotation from the great E.O. Wilson, professor of biology at Harvard, and who is known as the father of biodiversity. His research focus was on ants, but he also promoted a novel theory about social behavior and the evolutionary value of altruism. If there is danger in the human trajectory, it is not so much in the survival of our species as in the fulfillment of the ultimate irony of organic evolution, that in the instant of achieving self-understanding through the mind of man, life has doomed its most beautiful creations. His argument here seems to be that our own ability to understand so deeply the world has led to our destroying it. He ends this quotation with, and thus humanity closes the door on its past. So what I'd like to do is just take a few minutes to talk about the problem, the mass extinction, the sixth mass extinction that we have now entered. I think the professor has, previous speaker, Professor Shinawi, has adequately introduced us to this problem. How does monitoring species and species diversity help the problem? How do we do it now? How can we do it in the future with AI? And we'll just go through a few examples of how that could happen. So let's first think about this problem through the, and relate the problem of diversity to the Sustainable Development Goals. A statement from the 2019 Intergovernment Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services is found here. Quote, the health of ecosystems on which we and all other species depend is deteriorating more rapidly than ever. We are eroding the very foundations of our economies, our livelihoods, food security, health, and the quality of Earth worldwide. This report, published in 2019, was 3 years in the making with 145 scientists, 50 countries, and its purpose was to assess the changes in the past 5 decades. So they looked at 50 years of changes in biodiversity and studied the relationship between economic development pathways and their impact on nature. They were able to see that we have lost more than 40% of amphibian species, 30% of reforming corals, a third of all land mammals, at least 10% of all insects, although it's harder to study insects. 680 vertebrate species have been driven to extinction since the 16th century, with 9% of domesticated breeds of mammals under threat. That's about 1,000 different species, domestic breeds under threat, different breeds. An additional 2.4 billion population is estimated to reside on the planet by 2015. So if monitoring can help these, can help us somehow control this explosion of needs for food, health, and quality of life, let's see how AI can help that. How do we traditionally measure or monitor biodiversity? We can count all the species in a given area. That area can be a single tree or a single, cubic inch of soil, a lake, an ecosystem, a landscape, a region, or the whole planet. And for that, we rely a lot, actually, on citizen science, on citizens helping to count animals and count species, and also research. Imaging and drones has been used to take pictures from distance or to set up cameras at sites and record animals as they pass by. Other kinds of diversity can be measured by genetics. So genetic diversity is the total variety of genes within a single species. Endemism can also be used. For example, one can study a single region's range of endemic species and make some predictions or measurements about biodiversity there. And then ecosystem diversity, which is looking at the total numbers of different ecosystems in a given region. But really, biodiversity is the sum total of all biotic variation from the level of genes all the way up to ecosystems, and is often used as a measure of the health of biological systems. How can AI help? Here's a very quick primer on artificial intelligence. It's the science of how machines can mimic human aptitudes. And AI is a computer system that has human-like properties. One kind of artificial intelligence is machine learning, which works on the idea that there exist patterns in all data that can be identified and used to create so-called algorithms to make future predictions. The machine learns on its own to make the rules, to make the algorithms, and then follows them. And then deep learning is a subfield of machine learning. The machine uses different layers to learn from the data. Instead of just looking at data across a single level, it starts to look deeper and deeper. The depth of the model is represented by the number of layers. And the increasing complexity of the number of layers means that that artificial creators of these kinds of deep learning models are beginning to approach the nature of the human mind. So, what are some examples of specific applications of AI in biodiversity monitoring? Certainly, AIs have been used in animal detection and in counting and in recognition. Endangered species, for example, are on the brink of extinction, require special and specific conservation approaches. So AI-enabled drones can report back to researchers efficiently about location and status of threatened population. Poaching, especially of elephants and rhinoceroses, but many other animals, has reached crisis proportions around the world. And AI, working together with forest rangers and law enforcement, can contribute to control of poaching. Waste materials in the ocean, such as plastics, can be characterized and tracked and documented and measured using image capture, gathering marine litter information and sending it back to researchers and regulatory agencies. And then finally, image annotation for animal conservation. Details of not only species, but also of specific animals can be used so that the animals can be tracked with great accuracy. I should say here that one of the problems, one of the sort of limitations, in case we get to this kind of discussion of using AI, is the generation of data, so that one has to really find millions of photographs of animals such as these on the screen to be able to feed enough information to a machine learning algorithm. Now, while the above examples rely largely on image management, there are increasingly sophisticated applications using AI that are appearing with great frequency. For example, the program described in this paper, Improving Biodiversity Protection Through Artificial Intelligence, points out in its opening that not one of the 20 biodiversity targets agreed upon by 196 nations in 2011 for protection under the Aichi Biodiversity Target Agreement for the period of 2011 to 2020, not one target was reached, and that a more realistic and effective or fruitful policy or approach must be developed in order to produce a sustainable future. For example, at the Global Biodiversity Framework, just this year in 2022, new approaches were urged, and AI was one of them. So in this project, the proposition is that one can optimize biodiversity protection in a complex, rapidly changing world and harness AI to incorporate multiple variables, such as land use, or new roads, or climate change, or short-term weather events, and monitor and incorporate a huge number of variables to better model the complexity of interactions over time and in multiple regions around the world. Other models of increasing complexity are shown on this slide. I'll just talk about the one in the upper left-hand corner, which is the so-called time machine framework, generated by workers at the researchers at the University of Birmingham in the UK. In this framework, one goes back in time to observe linkages between biodiversity or status of biodiversity, pollution events, and environmental changes, and so on, record what the effects are on ecosystems in the past. Once these correlations are totally understood, they can be used to forecast the future of ecosystem services, such as climate change mitigation or food proximity provisioning and clean water, and prioritize what actions should be taken. An important aspect of all of this work is that these activities be globally coordinated. And in this paper, Navarro et al. Describe the essentiality of the essential biodiversity variables, some of which we've talked about, and how they can be coordinated through biodiversity observation networks, but that there should be a central clearinghouse so that all of the activities that are going on around the world can be corralled into one set of assessments and one set of strategic plans. Regular biodiversity monitoring, even with a degree of inaccuracy characteristic of citizen science surveys, further improves biodiversity outcomes. Artificial intelligence holds great promise for improving the conservation and sustainable use of biological and ecosystem values in a rapidly changing and resource-limited world. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. I think it's a fascinating, citizen science, that sounds a beautiful idea. So I always miss Jersey beaches. So I think, and now I will be missing the barbecue also. 4th of July is coming very close.
Yes, it is.
I think we should work, artificial intelligence, this sounds so fascinating, I think. So we will go with the next presentation because we have a combined question and answer session. And I will request the speakers like Dr. Shinwari and Professor Connell